all words are metaphors, but some are more obvious and less creative metaphors than others. So when you have a metaphor that's as on the nose, so to speak, as calling aesthetic judgment taste, when we talk about our taste in music, our taste in art, I think there's some connotations that come with the word taste and illustrate our assumptions about aesthetic judgments. Some things that pop into my head immediately are taste is very visceral. It's probably our most primal sense. Plenty of animals have no sight, no hearing, but all life eats, and it's a pretty basic function to learn to discern what's tasty, what's good for you, and what's not.
Taste is the thing you can be scared of certain aspects. As a person who has really weird, honestly, just straight up phobias off certain objects and things like food related, aka cheese, hardcore until recently bread, sort of red sauce, and eat like things like that. That can be said very similarly for musical taste. Even though, I will clarify, I really like the taste of cheese. I really like bread and red sauce. I love salsa. I love tomatoes. I love all that everything. It's just at some point, I had something in me say, these are not for you. These are not things you should consume. These are bad things. And I just internalized that somehow. But now as I'm getting older, I'm realizing, okay, I can start to know that like I do actually like these. It's just conceptually I don't. When it gets to music, there are genres that you're taught, or sounds that you're taught, like auto-tune. A lot of people are taught, oh, auto-tune bad because you learned auto-tune bad. Nah, you really like the sound of auto-tune. You just don't want to be told you're listening to auto-tune right now. Even like for full genres of music, you could say, oh, I don't like Indian food. You're like, okay, what kinds don't you like? You're just like, oh, I just don't like any of it. It's just not my palate.
It's like, no, do you not like butter chicken? Do you not like curry? Do you not like chilies? Do you not like lamb? Do you not like cumin? What are we talking about?
You get stuck in your head at a certain point. You don't like certain genres of music, and it just lingers for too long. Like me and the Beatles.
But it can also be like down to like the basic level of like, if you're born here, like, and listening to Western style and based music with like Western scales and stuff and everything, and then like if you hear Eastern music or Middle Eastern music or any other different kind of tonality and stuff, and just different approaches to music that other regions and countries take, some of that music will be interpreting it outside of our like viewpoint that we're just kind of born into, and like know the sounds and like familiarity of like that Western approach and like theory and everything. Like a lot of people without exposing them to that different thought of like different rules and stuff for music. It's some of that stuff will be perfect to what all of their rules are, but if you try and apply it to these rules, it's like terrible, doesn't make any sense.
I do greatly agree with that. A reason I stopped and looked on my phone is because I was trying to find the exact name of the person I was trying to talk about. But my biggest case, for me at least, was Ibanez released a new line of fretless basses. And it just happened a bass player, it was a Japanese bass player who I followed for probably a year and a half at that point. He's an insanely good jazz bass player. He did the demo for the fretless bass and played a lot of things showing off a fretless bass. A bass where there's no scale, it's purely just you can play whatever notes you want.
You're talking about like microtonal playing?
Exactly. He did a lot of that. Over 50% of the comments were hate comments saying, dude needs to actually learn how to play in key, like all this other stuff, talking about how he's not actually like playing the bass. Why the hell did they hire him to do this demo? If they look at any of his music, this dude knows his shit like really well. They just really didn't like it because he showed off the microtonal elements of a fretless bass. And that goes into, if your palate isn't ready for it, you're not gonna like it. But don't just say it's bad because your palate isn't ready for it. The palate's there for somebody, and some really talented person's gonna like it. And also some other just people are just going to really like it, but don't just say it's bad because it's not in your bubble of what you're comfortable with.
for most of how people thought of art back in the old days, we talked about aesthetics, and that's literally, I think it's Greek, and it's the study of perception and sensation. So you would talk about art to talk about why you feel the things that you feel about some art and not about other arts. And then it kind of became moralized when we started talking about taste, when your aesthetic judgment was no longer just a objective observation about how something affects you, but it's now a moral judgment about whether something is good for you, whether it's healthy or not. There's a lot of people, and I think there's arguments to be made that some music gets you thinking, it can improve your life, and there's music that encourages people to shut off their brain. I personally think it's a lot more about how you use the music than what the contents of the music are.
That's like saying white noise and like nature ambient sounds are trash because people just use that to fall asleep. It's like, dude, yeah, we're using it to fall asleep. That's why we're using it. Like
music that keeps me woke.
Yes, there's different music that then keeps you awake. There's music for when you want to. I'm really trying not to make Kendrick references right now. I make music that electrify. You make music that pacify. But yeah, that's just what taste are you looking for? What palette are you going for in that given moment?
A lot of the time, your taste and your idea of what is like good music is determined by how you're raised, what you're exposed to early on. And a lot of your taste formation is correlated with the same critical periods in your development as language learning, your personality. It's much harder to learn a new language as an adult than as a child, because as a child, you're neuroplastic. You're designed to take an input and adjust the shape of your brain to it. You're going to build around your environment. And so the music you listen to growing up, that's kind of established your taste for your entire life. This is called enculturation, in case anyone's curious. At least that's what they call it in humanities. Well, it's called neuroplasticity in psychology. But same general idea. Your brain is designed not to be able to learn everything that you're going to need to learn, but it's designed to learn a few basic principles that you can keep. If you grow up in for instance, a very stressful environment, you're going to learn to expect stress at any point. And that's how trauma works.
Yeah, I mean, and it's down to an evolutionary thing where it's literally the environment that you are growing up in. Like when you're young, you learn, what am I going to experience here? What's going to be difficult here? What are threats and dangers and struggles here? And you develop those skills. Okay, I need to be good at those things and be ready and prepared and know about those things.
Yeah, and that way when you're an adult, you don't even need to think about how to respond to threats in your natural environment.
Exactly.
It's part of your brain structure. The same thing happens with music taste. I think it was an Adam Neely video. He likes to do the anti-clickbait thumbnails, and the video was something like, what determines music taste? And his cop-out answer was, whatever you listened to when you were 12.
Valid. I mean, what I listened to when I was 12 was probably Chicago and classic rock, stuff like that.
The entirety of my music taste can be traced back in some form to Guitar Hero 3.
Valid.
That and Nickelback. That's my first memory of music existing, was seeing a Nickelback shirt on my dad. But I was even going to the whole, Brat Summer girls who don't listen to any rock and roll at all, period. They definitely know all the lyrics to classic rock songs because they definitely listened to it with their parents when they're growing up. The same with a lot of dudes. It's the same deal, but you get surprised by what music people have internalized, but they don't actively listen to.
Oh, I got Flock of Seagulls internalized and on lock at any given moment. Them and The Cure.
Oh, man, that explains your hairstyles back in the day.
We had the same hairstyle for 3 years.
And I got called Flock of Seagulls.
For those of you that don't know, I had blue hair pixie cut, same as this motherfucker, for 3 years.
We got to pull the who wore it better, a pick by pick comparison.
That'll be the thumbnail. You two side by side.
The conundrum for us musicians who are terribly aware of our own subjectivity and our own biases. I think the sign of a great music listener is being able to appreciate any kind of music for its merits. We could argue that some music does not have merits.
Ice JJ Fish.
Cap all the merits.
The issue is you lose neuroplasticity. You lose this ability to naturally incorporate the things you experience in the structure of your brain around your 20s. It slowly fades out starting from that like critical period in early youth. So you won't be able to appreciate new things in music. You can still appreciate old things in new music. A lot of contemporary pop music, it's still based on the same fundamental principles as pop music in the 80s and in the 60s.
And like the overarching view of it, I don't say there's any music that doesn't have merit, but for you personally, once your brain finishes developing, if there is music outside of the realms that you grew up in and your brain has developed to understand, that music cannot have any merit to you, and that determines taste. Doesn't mean it doesn't have merit to others. There's no merit to you, and that's the difference between music you'll listen to and music you won't.
Let's say you won't be able to understand the merit of this song on its own terms. So maybe people who are immersed in this genre, who listened to harsh noise music growing up, they know what's good harsh noise music and what's bad harsh noise music. There's some harsh noise that's just harsher and noisier, but it all sounds like noise to you. And that's an issue of enculturation. Now, the catch here is you don't entirely lose neuroplasticity once you hit your 20s. It's not impossible to change the structure of your brain. It's just not passive. It's not a natural thing. You can't just like casually listen to noise music and expect to understand what makes it good. It is possible to trigger neuroplasticity under a specific set of situations, and mostly how these situations come into being is adrenaline and acetylcholine. Adrenaline, I'm sure y'all have an idea of what that does. It activates when you have a reason to be on edge, to be paying attention to your surroundings, hypervigilant. And acetylcholine, it more has to do with focus. In terms of survival benefit, you can think of this as like, if you're under threat in your environment, you're going to have adrenaline and you're going to be focused. And this is a situation in which the human body, evolutionarily speaking, would want to change how it works. Because if you're encountering a new threat, something that's unpredictable, that's getting you to a specific state of alertness and focus, then it's beneficial for your survival to be able to change how your brain works around this. A new predator enters the ecosystem. It obeys different rules from the saber-toothed tigers and crocodiles you're used to. And so you're going to start to make space in your brain for this.
Yeah, and I think that goes into probably the way that most people experience, why'd I just lose the word, like acquired taste. That's what I was looking for. And that is like, if there's a particular moment or just period of time in your life where something like particularly moving or memorable or scary or just meaningful in any way to you happened, like what music you were listening into that time frame, like somebody was showing you, or you were friends with a band like that played music that you wouldn't have really considered your taste in that time period. Now that gives you some grounding point for that music. Now it's when you listen to that music, the basis of your enjoyment and understanding of it is going to come from that moment or that period of time.
Exactly. That's why like people have these breakup songs that they didn't really resonate with until they went through a very intense psychological period. Or why live music can sometimes be a better way to learn to enjoy a band, not just because the live experience is different from the recording, but because in a live situation, it's an intense environment. It's loud. There's a lot of people. There's a reason for your body to be on alert. And if you're in this natural state of alertness and you make a choice to focus on the music instead of like focusing on a conversation, then you're much more likely to figure out, oh, this is why people really like this band that I just didn't get before.
Yeah, and like the feeling and intensity of listening to a song live at a show with the band playing it versus listening to that song in your car after work. Which one are you going to be much more likely to remember? A lot less likely that you're going to have such a profound moment or experience listening to that song that you're going to remember sitting there in your car after work versus hearing a song live. and seeing that band and being there and experiencing the song happen in that moment?
To an extent, I feel like conditions that you listen to the music in beforehand affect how you approach the live show and how it affects you. Like with Julia, for example. I listened to Julia in a very rowdy and music-friendly environment as my first experience of the band. And that colored my experience going into their show. And when their live show exemplified that was the correct way to listen to their music, I feel like it deepened the connection between myself, their artistic direction, and just generally the vibes, to put it in layman's terms. But with this one band, Maserati, I listened to their music on a late night drive. It's very much kind of robot rock, very synth rocky, kind of interesting, minimal vocals. And when I saw them live, I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but it was 4 guys on stage with psychedelic light show. And it's your perception going into the live show that can kind of color your perception of that band and that music moving forward.
Yeah, and then I think that's also just kind of like what I was saying and what I'm getting at, just talking about the blanket, like if I were to experience like country music or if I were to experience pop music, like for the, it's just less descriptive like genres, just the kind of generalization of that music as opposed to like a particular artist, because there are different artists that like you are meant to listen to this like on your phone, or you're meant to listen to this in the car, or you're meant to listen with headphones or live. Like people make music intended to be experienced in different ways. So that's why you'll have all these outliers of bands. But what I was getting at is just kind of like a fair way to kind of get at, like, you're more likely to have an experience like that where you really kind of like appreciate and understand the music when you're listening to a genre that you're not particularly interested in your current state. I think a live setting has much more opportunity and I guess just a better chance having that happen.
At the very least, it's more likely to cue you into how you're supposed to listen to it, because you've got people around you and you'll see like these guys are dancing, these guys are sitting back and like thinking about it, these guys are punching each other. And that gives you a sign. It's like, I'm supposed to appreciate this music for this kind of thing that it does to people.
Well, I'll go on the hard binary of the two things I've had in my playlist rotation recently. I've been listening to, first one is the country song Wasted on You by Morgan Wallen. It is the most generic trap beat in the background. It's literally just a hip-hop song with a country singer over it. I've been listening to that and Bigger Houses by Dan and Shade or somebody. Those songs, I never want to hear that shit live. That would suck live.
We worked Dan and Shay, didn't we?
We what?
That was my first show I worked with the union.
Oh, we did work that show. That's where I recognized them. Okay.
Yeah.
Brian is one of my favorite motherfucking country dudes. He has that timbre to him. He has that, like, he has ominous feelings towards all of his songs. Like, his songs seem, like, eerie just because of how he sings them. Back to the point. Dan Shane, or Shane, whatever the fuck. I know who they are, but they're not on legendary status. They're on the current, like, up, like, rise, their peak.
You said back to the point, and you're not on the point.
Oh, back to the real point. So the two people on my, like, rotation have been Morgan Wallen and the Dan Shay. The other main artist has been Consider the Source, because they just released their new EP, and I love listening to their EP on the phone. Consider the Source live is insane. Like, it is life-changing listening to them live in any capacity.
I can back that.
Jordan, even just to hearing it partially from the car for that one show. And yeah, no, we'll clarify, I may or may not have been on illicit substances. But
as you should.
I was with a group of people when they were playing at Shikori, and I literally just started to hover and tell them I'll be back, and just got lifted towards the stage. That's all I can describe it as I was pulled to the stage. and it is insane. I love their recordings. It's insanely good. It's just they're a band that takes you out of your body live.
On the subject of substances, there is a reason I'm talking about the neuroscience of this, because the brain is a machine and all machines can be hacked. So, you out there, podcast listener, adrenaline and acetylcholine. Now, there is a mostly legal substance that automatically generates acetylcholine, or rather the thing you inhale attaches to your acetylcholine receptors, and it's nicotine. So, if you're not a normal cigarette smoker or vape smoker, if you're trying to get into a new kind of music that you haven't been able to appreciate before, my suggestion is do something that gets the adrenaline up. I like to go on a brisk walk and smoke a blunt. It's got the nicotine and the tobacco wrap, and THC like heightens your sense perception.
Which is also legal in the state of North Carolina.
Yes, don't forget.
Sure is.
Yeah, you can like trigger this response so that you're able to be more alert and more focused and more able to take in a new kind of music and learn to experience it on its own terms if you smoke a little bit of nicotine. Apparently it's a thing that like people will smoke a cigar when they want to remember something, or smoke a cigarette, I guess, after sex. I think that's where that comes from.
All I'm gonna say, kids, remember, if you jailbreak your iPhones, you can always jailbreak your noggin.